Welcome back to Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast. Moonstar Pride 2023 continues now with special guest Rhett Collects, aka Myster Rhett, Myster Rhett. We were just looking at some of the ending stuff. Because the next section is actually your section, so...
Cool. Perfect.
Are you ready for that part?
I am ready. Somebody got into our building and...
Well, if you need to step away, no worries, but...
I already did. I checked in with everybody, so I think the police are on the way, so I hope it doesn't get loud, but I'm in my office and I locked the doors, so no one should barge in. Okay. I feel so mean, but we're all good.
Well, Sailor Moon is important.
Yes, exactly.
All right, go ahead.
So wait, where exactly are we?
We're on your focus, so
choose some characters and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, when I was reading this earlier, I was definitely, I feel like it's too easy to bring up Neptune and Uranus, but they really are, I think, like the most impactful, and at least for my journey, just because of the way that they're presented in the show is such like everyone has a crush on Haruka. It's this thing where they're never the butt of a joke. They're not too villainous. Everyone looks up to them and people are always complimenting them, and people, I think Usagi, maybe Chibiusa, like they have said like they want that kind of love, like they want what they have, and it's something that I think is done so well that it still holds up to this day, like their relationship, and it's inspiring, I think.
I think that's a great answer. I totally agree with all of that. And some of these questions we already talked about. What was the first specific moment you noticed between Uranus and Neptune, if you can remember?
Oh.
Or any moment that really just sticks out to you?
Probably the episode where they are in the cathedral getting like shot or whatever. And
yeah.
They're like dying for each other. It's like this very like, maybe not Romeo and Juliet, but kind of has that like sacrificial part of it, and like that's like love, and I think they say it in there too, and it's that's like a moment that stands out. And probably during my first watch of it, I already knew what they were in the Japanese in Japanese, so when I watched the English version on my old VHS tapes, and I thought it was pretty cool.
That scene is really powerful, for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of the first times we see they die in the show before that, but this is it's because it happens with the gun. Do you remember the
the blaster thingy?
It extracts the heart crystal. And there's that moment when Haruka like puts her chest up against it herself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That scene.
And it really does hit you in a way where you're like, these characters are so devoted to each other in a way that a lot of straight couples aren't,
Right.
So they're I think it's a great answer. We talked a little bit about this already, but just real quick about your collection. What got you started on collecting and taking it seriously?
I visited Japan with my fiance in 2019, and I've always kind of been a collector, and I've always been really into like toys and games and stuff like that. So we went to a lot of hobby shops in Tokyo, and I saw all of the vintage Sailor Moon stuff, and I remember thinking it was so freaking cool. And it was definitely out of my price range at the time. I was a broke server, and I was like, I spent all my money to come on this trip. I'm not going to spend, more money on toys, because what am I going to do with toys? Yada, yada, yada. And then we went back home, and I went to a flea market with a friend after work, and we saw a Sailor Moon doll. And she was like, look it's Sailor Moon, because everyone knew that I liked Sailor Moon. And I was like, I guess this is a sign. I have to get it. And I got the doll. and she just kind of sat on my shelf for a while, and then COVID happened, and I got extra unemployment money, and I decided that she needed a friend, and I got her another doll. It was a Super Sailor Moon doll from Japan, and I kept the collection going from there because I was like, okay, I have this one. Well, now I need the other Senshi, and I need to do everything, and here I am today.
Was the first doll the 90s Moon doll?
Yeah, it was a 11.5-inch Sailor Moon adventure doll. So, which fans, or not fans, but like collectors would call them the pretty face dolls from Irwin Toy.
Hmm.
So she's tall like a Barbie, and yeah.
What's the box look like? Is it the blue one?
Mine didn't come in the box, but there's actually two versions. There's a blue box version and a yellow box version.
I did not know that.
They're
That's
the
interesting.
same doll, but released in different years. I think the first one was released in 2000, and the yellow box was 2001.
Because I think I have the year 2000 production specs binder, and it has the like design for the doll boxes and the requirements and stuff
Oh,
in it. It's
cool.
so interesting. It's so freaking interesting. We're gonna do an episode about it, and I'm gonna
Ooh.
post pictures. Yeah, I thought you might like to see some of that because it has like the design for the hang tags and stuff, and
Oh,
it was
that's so
like,
cool.
yeah, and it's like you can use these images, you can use these backgrounds for your advert. It's so interesting.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Right? What? Let me get through the rest of these questions. Okay, this is a good one. What was it about Sailor Moon that made you really just connect to that one above other ones?
Is this a question for both me and Chris, or just me?
This is for you, but I want to know what Chris's answer is too.
I think it's kind of the timing in my life where I was and the oddity of how I discovered it. I was at a Toys R Us the first time I ever went to a Toys R Us in 2007, and I was kind of at an age where I felt like I wasn't really playing with toys, but I was like into video games and movies. And VHSs weren't really like a thing in 2007, like they were trying to get rid of them. And there was
Hmm.
this one VHS tape under the DVD aisle that I pulled out, and it was a Sailor Moon Supers VHS. It had Sailor Jupiter on the cover, and I remember like this weird feeling because I was a weird kid who like I knew what I wanted and I was gonna go and get that, and I didn't like try new things, but there was something really weird that I gravitated towards this tape, and I purchased it. Well, I tried to purchase it, and they couldn't even find it in their system at Toys R Us. They're like, we don't know
Oh
how we
wow.
have this, and they sold
Hmm.
it to us for like some random price or whatever. And I took it home, and it was episodes 161 through 163 of Supers. Basically, when Nehelenia gets the spider webs everywhere in the town. And I
Yeah.
just had never, I think I had watched it as like a little kid. And that's why like I was like, why is this so familiar? But I just like didn't remember it. But it was so magical. And I was like, I've never seen something like this. And also, like, it wasn't on TV. I couldn't find anything else about it in the store. So it was like this super mysterious thing. And I just like fell in
Hmm.
love with it. And I was also like, there was a lot of home life issues going on. And I think I just got so attached to it. And it became like this comfort show. And also like this like thing I wanted to discover, and like learn more about.
Okay, I just think it's so fascinating that you had that moment where it was like this tape is there but it's not in the system,
Yeah.
and it's somehow also those episodes of Super S are some of the like the animate, you know what I mean, with the, I don't know, those just always stood out to me.
I think it was like the best way I could be entered into the series, especially because I was at Toys R Us and I was feeling like, oh, I'm not a little kid. Like, I don't want toys. And then I find this kind of like mature show there. And
Yeah.
I felt like, oh, I'm in the right place. Like, this is the kind of media that I want at this like transition in my life?
Well, and it all lined up perfectly. You walked into the store, you were looking at a cheaper item, you
Uh
didn't want a
huh.
toy, like you were saying, and then you don't usually try new things, and for some reason you were like, something about this is like pulling me in. I think I'm hugely into the VHSs. That's one of the things I do collect,
Oh, cool.
and you probably can agree with this. The cover art is straight up art on all of them.
It's immaculate.
It's
Yeah, I have a bunch of the VHS copies, and like that's why it's like just having that boxed art is just so beautiful to me.
It's yeah, they're gorgeous, and I think that the mystery aspect, which you brought up, is another thing that's very specific about Sailor Moon, especially if you were a fan back in the day. And I've referenced this on the show before, but it was like you really had to dig to be a fan and put in a
Oh,
lot
you
of effort.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
and it made it feel very special because a lot of people didn't know what it was, not the way they do now. Chris, what about
Yeah,
you? Oh,
it was
sorry, go
not
ahead.
something that I was gonna say, just like it was something that like I would go back to class and like nobody knew what the heck I was talking about, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but yeah.
No, that's fine. Chris, what made you choose Sailor Moon, or what connects you to it above other things?
I think it's different nowadays than when I was a lot younger because I went through a phase when I was a teenager where I wasn't really into it as much. I was more into quote unquote like straight guy animes like Bleach and Naruto and that shit. Uh, but since I've been older, and been a production art collector, I don't know the big thing with me with Sailor Moon now, like maybe above everything else, I don't know, but is just the art style, and being able to own that. And I know Red like worships Ikuko Ito
I do.
at least almost as much as I do.
I
um,
really do.
and then just when I discovered how, not just for Sailor Moon but for like sketch work for anime, how depending on what the color of sheets is, or even just a normal white colored paper, that like that's the easiest way to own things that are drawn by your favorite animator for an anime. And just like getting the opportunity to own things that she drew for like episodes that in S and Super S when she was at her peak, that just means a lot to me. And so I think since I've been older, like um, the artistic effort put into it in Sailor Moon is what means the most to me. But obviously the representation aspect, and I don't know, it's just one of those animes. Like I have a handful that I can just watch over and over again and never get sick of either.
Well, I think it's interesting that you didn't, no, actually, neither of you, and I wouldn't either, mention the LGBT representation as our like number one reason. And
Yeah,
while it's great that it's in there, I think what makes it work so well is that it's not the main focus. It's
Yeah.
not the only thing that matters. It's sort of like these are just people who also happen to exist in this world. And to me, that's like my favorite kind of representation, actually.
Me too. I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I think it's great that because the show was so strong on its own without any of that already, that we would have connected to it on these other ways. Having all of that is kind of like the icing on the cake or whatever. I think, are you an artist, Chris? Do you draw? Chris.
oh me, oh no, I don't draw. I mean, I used to when I was a kid and like an early teenager, but I don't, not anymore.
I was just curious if that was your connection to the art style, because that is kind of, I've noticed when we do the show too, it's where your focus is. So I'm curious where that comes from.
Oh, yeah. No, I think I'm sure if I didn't get into the anime production art stuff hobby at such an early age, I don't think I would, view it in that kind of perspective like I do now whenever we do the show or watching any anime period.
I think it's definitely something I didn't pay attention to as a kid, but because you've been pointing it out to me, I've been noticing it a lot more. And it's almost like a secondary storyline of like what was going on with the animators, what was going on behind the scenes,
Oh, I
like
know, right?
because we as we go through each episode, it's like we have one episode where the animation is like immaculate, and then the next episode they have the baby faces, and then the next
Right.
episode it's
Yeah.
another person, and it's kind of like, why is it bouncing around so much? um and I didn't know it, but I've always been a big fan of Ito's art because I used to obsessively collect the unedited or the whatever uncut version of the Soup the Sailor Moon S VHS.
VHS.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's all her art. That's what they used on that. It's the it's I think
Yeah, top
originally,
tier.
yes, it was originally for the Japanese Laserdisc, right? I think is what we
Yeah.
figured out. Some of the best official art from the show, I think. Let me ask you some general fan questions, and both of you can answer each one, okay? So, Rhett, you go first. Choose up to 3 favorite characters from the show.
I feel like my taste in characters have definitely evolved over the years. I would probably say that my favorite characters are Sailor Moon is always my number one. I identify with her the most in all aspects. And then I would say Sailor Mars and Sailor Starfighter. Seiya.
Okay. Okay. Give us a little reason why for Mars and Starfighter.
I've always particularly liked, I actually, every voice actress that has portrayed Sailor Mars, Japanese, 90s English, and then Christina V today, I love their voices. And I love how they've all portrayed Sailor Mars. And I feel like it's always been solid in that way. And I also just I like the character. I like who she is, and I like a lot of her dialogue, and I like the way she interacts with people. I don't know, she's someone that I've gravitated towards, throughout the years. I used to be like, I think Jupiter was my favorite like growing up, and then
Hmm.
like now I really like Mars.
And then Sailor Starfighter.
I just love the drama. I love the romance drama and the fact that they're placed there, with Tuxedo Mask is like quote unquote dead. And I think that's like the most dramatic kind of like messy part of Sailor Moon, and I'm here for it. And I love that. I also think Sei is really cute too. I think it's like an attractive character.
I'm not going to refute that. And I'm just saying you get to see Seiya's chest for a little bit in one of his
Exactly.
transformations. And when I first saw that as a teenager, I was like, oh, hello.
Exactly.
What's that? I was like, can we do more of this? What the hell?
Right. Right. I agree with you.
100%. Chris, what about you?
Number one, there's definitely Haruka or Uranus. Two, I don't know, two, maybe, yeah, I guess two would probably be Ami, Mercury, and three, yeah, yeah, three would probably be Fisheye.
I'm surprised Fiore is not up there, honestly.
I was surprised. I was waiting for that one.
Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of like a,
It's hard, I know.
yeah,
Give us your reasons.
well, Haruka is just, she's always been my favorite, Sailor Guardian, and like the reason why I have a screen cap of her tattooed on one of my arms is because that was like the first thing I saw in media that made me realize that I wasn't straight. And uh, Ami, it's funny, I didn't used to like her when I was a kid, but I think since I've been older and I've been an adult, and the older I get, I think I'm probably the most like her, personality wise. And Fisheye, I think it's mainly because of the gay representation. But yeah, I mean, if I could pick another, it's probably tied between like Fisheye and Fiore, just for the Fiore for the same reason. So that'd be my reasons why for all of them.
I think those are great characters and great reasons. Fiore, I'm like on a Fiore kick right now, and I'm gonna, because of these conversations, probably go watch the R movie later. um, I enjoy him a lot. He doesn't make my top 3. I have Moon, Luna, and Mercury. For me, Moon is like the same reason as Rhett. I relate to her the most in personality. I definitely feel like I can be both extremely wacky and ridiculous, but when it really matters, I can kind of come through. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And I love just her, the way she approaches people who might otherwise not be treated well.
Oh yeah, 100%. She like piggyback, whatever. Going off of what you said, like not just like a personality thing, but I also look up to her as
Yeah.
as a role model still to this day. Like, what would Usagi do? You know?
Yeah. And we saw a great example of it recently on the show when she meets Jupiter for the first time. because there's like that whole rumor going on around her or whatever, and she just walks up to her and is like, so everyone's saying you're crazy and scary, can I have some food? Like,
Right.
and it's so charming and sweet, and it's like, yeah, if we could treat each other like that more, not always, you know, be safe, but like when it's appropriate, I think the world
Yeah.
would be a little nicer. I picked Luna because I love her mentorship role with Usagi, and she, especially watching the show as an adult, gives so much great advice that if you pay attention to it, you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's like really profoundly helpful. And it's stuff that I think I'm grateful that it was in the 90s version the way it was. And I think her character's delivery, Jill, how do you say her last name? Frappier?
Frappier.
Jill Frappier's portrayal of her, to me, was like the perfect balance of like firm and you want to listen to her, but also sweet and caring. And it was this great combination of both. And I feel like I trust the character of Luna every time I see her. I'm like comforted. And then Mercury.
You should
Yeah, go ahead.
you should because I know that you haven't really heard that much of the new dub, but yeah, I know, and I think you would probably like the new Luna, even though it's totally different. But I remember when I talked to Michelle Ruff, she said that when she recorded the S movie and at the scene at the end where Luna transforms into a human, like that, it affected her enough that she like cried recording it. So I think that you'd probably enjoy that if you.
I could probably feel that come through. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful scene too. Speaking of, I love that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Luna's character in general is fascinating, and I love that she has a human form. I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't even going to say anything about that, but I would. Are you guys caught up on the new stuff or no? Like the Cosmos and all that?
Yeah.
I haven't been. Do they do anything more with her as a human?
Didn't they in Eternal? I think she had a human form at like the last movie.
So does Artemis.
Okay.
And Diana.
I'm excited to see that because I've seen their manga human forms, but never. Well, other than
they look the same. Yeah.
Okay, so that's exciting. And then Mercury. The funny thing is, like, as much as I relate to Moon, there is kind of like a weird analytical side to me that I can get the same way as her sometimes. Like, you know, when she gets caught up in her head and like can't always figure out what certain people's intentions are and stuff. Like, I've had a lot of parallels to that. Plus, I love with her character, especially in season 1, she's not like the strongest when it comes to ability, like physical, like attacks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes off as almost the bravest to me because there's that moment where she's like, oh, I'm going to take on just by myself this doom and gloom girl with just my bubbles and a computer. You guys go ahead. And she knew she was going to die. You know what I mean? There's no way she didn't know that. And I remember watching that as a kid, just because she was my favorite back then, too, being like, you know what I mean? And like, because if you watch the Japanese version. And then that thing happens with the computer where she figures out that it's an illusion. And she's like, if I can break the illusion, they can do the rest. And then she does it with the computer. She's like, this is the last time I'm going to use this. There are just so many powerful notes in her character throughout the show like that it's hard for me not to, you know, really be connected to her. Rhett.
Yes.
And I know this changes, so this doesn't have to last forever, but what is currently your favorite season and why?
I did just recently establish that the third season S is my favorite because I just did a whole rewatch of the whole series and I think it stands out and of like just the plot that's going on is like peak Sailor Moon and you get all these new characters. It's super exciting. And for the longest time, Supers was my favorite season because that's what I was introduced to with. But definitely S, I think, is the most like impactful. And you can also see that in terms of like merchandise and toys that were released. Like they were really hitting it off right there. Like they knew, I think at that point, they knew how profitable Sailor Moon was. So like the art got better in that season and like the music is really good, you know.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Would you say the merchandise hit its stride at the same time then? as
I think that's when it started kicking off, and we were getting more dolls and characters and toys. But I think by the time Supers came out, then it was like at its most crazy controlled, like out of control, like toys for every single thing. Like they even made dolls for the Amazoness Quartet.
really
But S,
in
yeah,
America.
oh no, sorry, I'm talking about Japan. In
Okay, okay.
Japan, I would say in America, S was not hitting its stride and it majorly flopped. But I
Yeah,
think in Japan, it was very impactful.
I was gonna say I don't remember seeing American outer dolls. Do they have them?
They do, yeah, I have them. So they did
Oh,
release them, not to the scale that they had all the other dolls, but they're still pretty easy to find. So yeah, they continued making toys, and they made a Spiral Moon Heart Rod toy. Like they had toys to go along with the third and the fourth season.
the Spiral Heart Moonrod toy I've always wanted. Do you have it?
I don't have that one. I have the new Proplica that recently came out. I have that one, but I don't have the OG, unfortunately.
I
Not
may
yet.
I maybe should know this answer, but do you play with the toys or no?
I don't really play with them. I just leave them up there. I have nieces that are one's gonna turn 5 this year. When she comes over, I let her play with the older ones because they're already a
Right.
little bit beat up. But when I was babysitting her growing up, I made her watch Sailor Moon, and she got into it. I don't think she watches it now because her mom doesn't care, my sister.
Hmm.
But it is a memory with us that babysitting time was Sailor Moon time, and she can play with the toys and stuff like that.
You never know; it might pop back up for her later.
I hope so.
Right. So you've never done the full Spiral Heart attack just once with your Proplica?
No, but I have tried to spin it in my hand because I don't know how the hell Sailor Moon does that.
Like the
That's
baton
out of
twirling?
control. Yeah, she's crazy at it. So
Oh
I've
my
definitely
gosh.
tried to figure out what are the finger movements for that, and I definitely dropped it. So it's not something I practice normally or a lot.
That is the most talented thing she does, actually, is twirling her. The rest of it's just
Oh, it's
magic.
magic. It's truly magic.
That's insane. Well, honestly, like, the funniest thing now that you're mentioning it is remember, though, when we get to stars and she just holds it above her hand and it just twirls in the sky? They're like,
Oh yeah,
we're not animating that.
right.
We're
It's
just
just
gonna let it
I would
spin
like
in the
to think
sky.
I'd like to think that all of her wands just have their own ability to move on their own, and she just kind of levitates it, she guides it. I think that's
Naoko,
my head canon.
she releases it later and she's like, actually, there's a mechanism inside. It's a little motor that twirls. Like,
Right. And now we have to release new toys to reflect
yes.
that.
Chris, what is your favorite season? Also S, I think we've said, or Super S.
It's definitely us. I mean, from an artistic standpoint, Supers was the peak of that. But I mean, S was too by the end. But yeah, just like in terms of everything overall, it's S for me as well.
I think it's very close. I agree with you both on all of those points, and it's kind of tied with me right now. My favorite currently, though, is season one. Part of it is because we're covering it on the show, but also I really love. There's something about like firsts in Sailor Moon specifically, and it's like the first time we see
Yeah,
each scout is always so exciting. The first time we get the healing, like the rainbow crystal, and there's
Yeah.
something about the storytelling in season one I think that is more unique and less formulaic than in other
Oh, I think so
seasons.
too. I think
Um,
I kind of feel when I've gone back and watched the first season, it in a way it kind of feels like a different show from the rest. Like
yeah,
its format and everything, and even like kind of the way that the characters interact is so unlike how they do later on. It kind of feels like a standalone show, which I guess it kind of does because they all die in the end and they're reborn. So it is kind of its own timeline of Sailor Moon.
it could, and I
yeah,
think the intention originally was for it to end after season one, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
yeah,
And so that's why it ends the way that it does, because it actually could just stop there and the show would be complete if
Hmm.
they decided not to continue. So that does give season one kind of a uniqueness to it. Which you have to choose one, I'm sorry, but choose one of your favorite transformation sequences from the 90s version.
Oof, me first.
Yeah, let's go with you.
Okay. Let me know if I'm cutting out a little bit. I know people are starting to log into meetings and stuff like that, so I might lose a little bit of my connection. Probably Moon Gorgeous Meditation. It just like has a lot of cool effects on screen, and I like how she holds it like a sword.
Fair enough. We said transformation, but I'll include attack
Oh my god.
sequences.
Okay, no. Okay, favorite transformation. Probably it's either the first season or third season.
For Moon.
Yeah, oh my god, I'm sorry. Yeah, for Moon. I'm lacking my specifics.
That's okay.
Yeah, for Moon and the first season or the third season.
They're both great. Chris, what about you? Pick an attack and a transformation.
Like for any character?
Yeah,
or just for...
anybody.
Oh, okay. My favorite attack... I think it's Oak Evolution.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah. But honestly, like, any of the 4 final attacks in the original season for... I mean, it's mainly because of Ito's animation, but, and then transformation, probably... It would be one of Usagi's as well. Probably the Cosmic Heart, Season 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to also do Sailor Moon Season 3 Cosmic. There's something so well done about that one. Ito did that, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the movements are perfect with it. They all kind of make sense in a weird way. Does that, you know what I mean? Like, you know, sometimes in like the crystal transformations, it's a little bit like what? And the coloring, I think, it pops really well. There's something about the colors that they used in that season 2. I think the Eternals are a little busy for me. What about you guys?
For the new one, you mean?
No, I mean, sorry, like Sailor Stars, when she gets the big wings and everything.
Oh, too much. I really hate the wings. I've always hated them.
The only time that I enjoy them is when she is in her own house, like knocking things off of her shelves with them.
I was gonna say that's my favorite like scene from the show, because like I always hated the wings, and I just love that they're causing an inconvenience for her, because it's like the show poking fun at how dumb they are.
Yes, and then she throws the pizza because she doesn't have a tiara anymore.
Yes, that's such a good scene.
So funny. That kind of does make up for it. And then my favorite attack is Shine Aqua Illusion.
Cool.
It's just so pretty. I love the way you see the water drop with the sound effects. It kind of does the spiral thing up around her. And then specifically, I love the way they animate it when it's not the stock footage. Like in the movies, whenever they do the like little variation.
Yeah.
Do you remember in Super S when there's like the moment with the cannon and Mercury like clocks it in the movie, and she clocks it with her visor, and then she Shine Aqua Illusions the cannonball out of the sky?
Yes.
I'm just like, that is my utility. That's why she's my girl, because she's their like. Anyway, she's their Hermione.
I'll tell you, if I had her powers, I wouldn't even think to throw water at things. I would be like, I guess there's nothing we can do, you guys.
She's just like, no, let me just freeze it. We'll be fine.
Right.
Okay. This one, did you have time to choose a favorite episode?
Yeah, I would say that it would be, I think it's 161. No, actually, no, just kidding. 166, the final episode of Supers, is my favorite. The animation, I kind of like that the villain gets away, and the falling scene is just so cool to me, and it is unlike all the other finales of a season, and it's kind of this like anticlimactic, but like I feel like the circus doesn't need this big like thing, but it's mainly the art for me, and like because I had that VHS tape I found from Toys R Us, and it left off with the final, like there was 2 episodes or something after that I never saw for the longest time. And so, like, I was hunting for them for so long, and I finally saw that last episode on MySpace. Someone had uploaded it there.
Oh, wow.
And the sync was off. The audio was off. So the first time I watched it, like, it just like wasn't making sense. But I felt very achieved when I found that episode, and I've always been captivated by it.
I think that's a great answer. Also, fun fact: the reason you couldn't find it, that specific tape is the rarest out of all of them that has, and it's only I think got the last 2 episodes on it.
I have been searching for it, and actually, so you collect VHS, right?
I do.
Do you own that one?
I have 2 of them.
Oh! I was gonna say I know someone that's selling it, but they're selling it as a set, and I don't really want to go all out and buy the set, but I really want that one, so I might cave and do it.
Well, that might be me. Where are you looking? Because I collect, like, what I do is I go to these garage sales and stuff, and I get the Goodwill and all that, and I compile
Yeah.
sets, and then but because that one is so rare, I cannot sell
Uh-huh.
it individually, because I'll never be able to do a full set of Super S, you
Wait, you
know?
would have known if you were talking to me about it. I don't think you're the seller I'm
Oh,
talking to.
probably not then.
Oh, what
But
do you sell
yeah,
like on eBay
I
or?
do, but I have a website too. I did SailorMoonVideo.com.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, and it's like I sell stuff on it, but it's more like I realized a lot of the information about the VHSs out there was incomplete or incorrect. And I was like,
Mm.
I just
Yeah.
want to make a website that fixes that, and then you can also kind of buy stuff there if you want to. You don't have to. So yeah, you can get all
Ah.
the info on all of it there if you want.
SailorMoonVideo.com.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, that I thought that I wonder why that is so rare. I guess it's the
I
last
think,
volume they made, so
and they probably were like, this is not selling. VHSs are off the shelves at this point. We're going to DVDs. Let's just like
Yeah.
yeah, which
get
is
what we need
funny.
to. Yeah.
Because that volume of the DVD from Super S is actually the most common. So it's like
I
the rarest
know.
VHS and the most common DVD. Is so weird.
Yeah. I
Chris,
have two copies of the DVD.
same. Specifically though, those let's just gush over those DVD reversible covers for a second.
I'm so glad they did
Oh, I
that.
know.
It's so beautiful. Do you have any of those, Chris?
Not. I don't think I have any anymore. I did. The only ones I ever owned were the first volume of S, and then um, I owned two of the Super S DVDs. But I still have. I still have all the tapes like from S and Super S that I've had for like since I was a kid.
Don't there's something about them where it's just especially with the first release of the DVDs that like they really put so much back then into the presentation of things and making it beautiful and like more
Yeah.
sturdy and stuff. And now you get something like even a Blu-ray and like the new Sailor Moon stuff when they release it. There's something about the art and the box presentation that just doesn't click for me.
I'm right there with you.
I don't know.
It feels very I don't know. I know that they're in society in general right now. There's kind of like a movement for like kind of minimalist, kind of this like weird modern sleekness, but like in Sailor Moon we need loud. We need like colors and brightness and like
Yeah.
interesting things. And I particularly like it when they go darker with the covers, like kind of the laser disc stuff from the 90s. Just like the darker colors are always greater and yeah, this new stuff is not clicking for me.
I agree. I think it's got to be the color palette because everything now is sort of like it's the Sailor Moon characters, but then they're on that kind of like dull white pink, right?
Yes.
And
Hmm.
it's just sort of like whatever.
And I kind of like I don't want to diss the person reanimating some of these posters and artwork, but I feel like the poses are an issue for me too. They're not they're some
Yeah.
of like when I'm looking at your website right now and like looking at some of like
Oh,
the poses that they have in the past, they're
hmm.
almost like humans can't really achieve some of those poses, and I feel like that's a good thing. I feel like that's what makes it so like whimsical.
No, I totally agree with you. And it's something. It's the Jupiter pose for me specifically at the end of her
Which one?
transformation. Like you know when Jupiter at the end of her
Oh,
transformation with the hands.
she's kind of shaped like a four.
Yeah, and then I never noticed that before. Oh my god, she is
Yeah.
like her
I think
symbol.
I, I think everyone's trying to look like their symbol a little bit.
Hmm.
Oh my god,
But
you just blew my mind.
it's awkward. Is that what you're gonna say?
It's yeah, because like I remember my friend who was obsessed with Jupiter as a kid trying to do that stuff, and she just never could. You know what I mean? I remember always looking at her like that's not right. Not in a
Right.
judgy way, but you know what I'm saying. I'm just like, and then I would try to
Right.
do like the weird Mercury pose, and I'm like, this feels weird. Why are my knees together?
I
Like,
right.
like,
Right.
but that is sort of what it is. And then in the newer stuff, they all just kind of stand there normally, and you're like, oh,
Yeah, or
why
they
do you
have
do
got
that?
like a hand on their hip, an arm in the air kind of thing. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, you heard it here, new merchandisers. Step it up. No, I'm just kidding.
Please. I'm sure they've heard it so many times. I mean, they there's been apologies made, hasn't there?
I think so, and I think we also are in a situation where it's like certain companies who are not as big will get a license, but then because they don't have a big budget, the images and stuff
Yeah,
they're allowed to work with are extremely limited. And I think they're given guidelines like you can't edit this, you can't change that.
exactly.
So whatever the issue is, identify it and fix it. Whoever's job that is.
Right.
How about that?
That
Um,
might be a Toei animation thing. I know they're particularly very, very strict on how things can be manipulated. So they they need to be listening to us, but I doubt they will.
well, and here's the thing: they got it right before, so they can do it again.
Right.
They just got to figure out
Totally.
how to hit that spot.
That's optimistic. I
Yeah,
appreciate that outlook.
right. Well, I mean, it's kind of like if you've done something once, you can do it again for the most part, unless it's something
Yeah.
crazy and dangerous. But, um, all right, let's see. Do you have a favorite movie or special? And do you know the Super S specials? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course. I would say that I think the R movie is the best all around, but I watch the S movie every Christmas morning, and I guess that would just be the one that I always go back to. But I don't know. I think like logically, I think the R movie's my favorite, but like spiritually, I like the S movie.
I feel that. Also, that's such a fantastic tradition.
Oh
What a
yeah,
great
you have to
idea.
do
I'm gonna start this year. I'm not even joking.
it.
And you know what? It qualifies because there's that moment where Tuxedo Mask is Santa.
Exactly. If any movie has a Christmas reference, it's automatically a Christmas movie to me.
If any movie has snow, it's a Christmas movie to me because I don't
100%.
I don't see snow, so I'm like it's magic.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Me too.
yeah, where Chris is like it's disgusting. No,
Yeah.
but we're like, can we go out and play?
Yeah.
Chris, what about you? If you have to choose a favorite movie or special,
it would also be the R movie.
yeah, and I think we've said why. Um, I would choose Amy's First Love at the Super S special because it was one of those that I didn't
Aw.
know existed for a long time, and then I think I
Right.
saw a fandom of it, and then I saw that she got her own unique transformation, and then they did the Mercury Aqua Mirage in it, which is animated by Ito, I'm pretty sure.
No, but it's somebody else. The woman who did the whole special, Miho Shimogasa. She also did episodes of season 5. She did the episode, like the maid cafe episode, where all the scouts are dressed up in
Hmm.
maid
Really, I
outfits.
I
Yeah,
never clocked that. I think that she's known to be good, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
I
for
like
the
her.
5th season.
They
Yeah,
probably had a higher budget for that special too, because I think it was paired with the movie, right? So
yep.
You're
she
probably
had more
right.
time to work on that.
I don't know why they didn't localize. Oh, because there's like some gay stuff in it, or there's like implied possible gay moments. That's probably why they didn't localize it in the '90s. Anyway, did they ever do that? Did Viz do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I'm gonna watch that. I'm gonna see how they did.
I don't know if it's on the movie DVD or how it must be because I don't own any of those
I'm
ones.
sure it is.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
movie is it with? Super S movie.
Supers. Yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. All right, this is the last fandom-based question. Rhett, choose one specific scene from the show that's your favorite and why.
Well, I'd have to go with the scene where she's knocking shit over with her wings and throwing the pizza. I think that whole episode is just entertaining, but I particularly I like that goofiness of the scene because there's so much like depressing stuff that's gonna happen afterwards. It's this nice little moment, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. What about you, Chris?
I think for me it would be something that's more. It's pretty emotional, but I mean, I think all of my favorite scenes overall would be from like 124 and 125, but in 125 she when Usagi almost kills herself to save Hotaru. Um,
Yeah.
that's just it's so intense and like amazingly done.
Yeah.
That part when she jumps into what is it, Pharaoh 90 is what it's called?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
really intense moment. S in general would you say has the darkest ending?
yeah. I think so.
Because all of them are pretty dark, but that one is very, yeah,
It's very mature.
It is. And I think it takes a higher level of understanding to get all the nuances going on there than some of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
others. I think I would pick the episode in season 1 where the inners die, because I think each of their moments where they go out is like so well done. They
Yeah.
each, you really care. Like, at least I know every time I watch them die, it like hits me in the stomach.
Yeah.
And it feels almost like the most important or the most permanent, especially the first time you see it, because you don't know what's coming next. And at the time, if you didn't know there was going to be more, it's kind of like, wait, what? So yeah, I think that just hits especially well. All right.
Same.
So this last part, I'm going to see how it plays out, and if it's like too much of a downer, I'm not going to put it in the episode.
Okay.
But I do think this is important because this is the Moon Pride special, and I was telling Chris, this is for the Sailor Moon community, but in part it's also for our community, the LGBT community. And I just kind of wanted to take like a climate snapshot, I guess, of where things are today in 2023. And it's June when we're recording. So this is the summer of 2023. And as we mentioned in the beginning, all three of us are in very different locations in the same country where things are feeling extremely different for each of us right now, probably. So I'm going to start with Rhett. Can you kind of describe what the climate is for LGBT people in California, your area?
I would kind of say that it's pretty similar to the rest of the world. At least I know that I don't see as much pushback on LGBT stuff, like laws and stuff. I don't see as much as that here. Also, I'm not involved, like, I don't have kids of my own. I'm not involved with the school systems or anything. But my fiance's family, they live in Orange County. I live in Los Angeles County, and they are pretty extremely conservative to the point where they're not accepting of us. So it's just like people who are just 40 minutes away from us and family are not accepting. So it's still a
Oh.
thing that we deal with, and I don't think where I live is necessarily like a shield to that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that people hear that, because sometimes when you live somewhere where it's a little less, I wouldn't say it's like drastically less safe, but it's more a little noticeable. It's, you can think about places like LA or other, I guess Portland's a good example of a place you might think of as being
Yeah.
exceptionally safe. And I think it's important that we recognize that no matter where you are right now, this is actually
Yeah.
affecting all of us. Because getting into that mindset of like, oh well, there are some people in a bubble, or oh maybe if I just move there, everything will be fine.
Hmm.
That could be kind of dangerous thinking, I think. So I'm glad that you let us know about that. Do you feel safe out in like public to be completely yourself? Meaning, do you feel you can wear what you want to wear? Do you feel you have to edit anything when you go to like the grocery store?
I do. I feel safe. I'm not worried about how I'm presenting myself as much as I used to, especially like I see other gay people around me, and but I think I don't know if this is an internal thing or if it's still a thing, but like I still get nervous like holding my fiance's hand in public, like he wants to hold my hand, and if we're walking down the street and like another person's coming, like I'll quickly put my hand down, and I feel like shit doing that. But I mean, I've had bad experiences in the past, and so maybe it's just more like a trauma response, but I don't always feel that welcome to do that. But I'm not afraid to be myself alone.
That's a good thing, I think. Regarding the hand holding thing, though, that I think is such an interesting topic for our community, because it's almost like there's one mindset about it where you're like, I want to be out and proud and represent myself correctly. And I should be
Hmm.
able to hold my fiance's hand just like anybody else in public, right? But when you have had experiences like you have and like I've had, you know that that's inviting that kind of behavior sometimes. And you're like,
Yeah,
you know what? I can live without it. And it's all,
exactly.
and I don't necessarily feel like I'm losing a lot by just like confine, like not doing that, you know what I mean, if it means I can get through Target and not have an issue or whatever it is.
Totally. Like it's not worth fighting for. It's not going to ruin, make or break my day.
Yeah, it's like if I'm trying to check out and they're like, "Oh, I'm not going to check you out because I can tell you're, whatever," then that's when I'm going to have a problem with you or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But like that kind of stuff, that's interesting. What about you, Chris? What are you feeling in your area? You're in the so let's give people so Rhett, you are in the western area of the United States. You're on the West Coast.
Yes.
Chris is in the north. Chris, tell us what's going on up there.
Where I am, just outside of Minneapolis. Yeah, it's pretty safe, and I feel safe walking around. I very often go to the Minneapolis area, and just the last like 3 times I've been there, I just once I got there, I just walked around everywhere, and I'm totally comfortable wearing like walking around wearing crop tops there, and um, a lot of the area that I am walking around is a lot of the people are around my age range, and a lot of them aren't straight either, and I regularly go to the main gay club in Minneapolis, so yeah, at least the metro area has always been liberal and very accepting, so I never feel unsafe. It's really only unsafe in Minnesota, I think, if you in this kind of context, if you go more in the rural, like northern parts of the state. So I've always felt comfortable being who I am here so far.
I'm glad to hear that. I've been to Minnesota a handful of times in my life, and it's always had like really nice vibes for me. And I know that in the north, it's supposed to be a little more liberal in general. But again, like we were saying with Rhett, I always have heard that LA is like that, and it sounds like it's kind of a very
Yeah,
mixed bag there.
Yeah, depend like I said, it's like it's such a massive, like, few million people live here, so there's different neighborhoods, different cities that are all like just outside of the city that can be so different.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in this point, we're definitely better off than we were about 10 to 20, especially 30 years ago.
Oh yeah.
But we're sort of hitting what I kind of knew was going to happen eventually, which this is just every community always goes through this. Progress is never linear. So, like, we've made all this progress. We've been on a big uphill. Now, the people who don't want us to make progress are going to start getting really uppity, and we're going to have to deal with it. And this kind of thing always happens. In my location, I'm in the southeast of the United States, and I'm just about as far south, actually, as you can go geographically and stay in the country for the most part. And
Wow.
it doesn't really feel good here for LGBT people right now for several reasons. We've had a lot of anti-LGBT laws passed just in the last year. There, I think
Hmm.
six bills or something were up recently. They're attacking the way the education system is allowed to discuss things. There's a lot of cult-like behavior in my area that is
Oof.
anti-LGBT, and not just in my local area, but just in the I think in the South in general right now.
yeah,
Unfortunately, um,
Yeah.
there's stuff going on with gun violence that it sounds funny because that's like almost a separate issue, but it's not really because in where I'm at, they have something called a stand your ground law.
Stand your ground laws, in Alex's area, defined. Stand your ground laws allow individuals to use deadly force if they reasonably believe that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to themselves or another. Additionally, these laws authorize deadly force to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. In Alex's area, it is not a requirement for individuals to retreat to a place of safety instead of using deadly force. Proper application of these stand your ground laws require proof that 1. The defendant reasonably believed that deadly force was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself, or another, or to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. 2. The defendant acts under, and, according to the circumstances set forth in, redacted statutes specifics, which presumes a reasonable belief as to the necessity of force, in the context of defending dwellings, residences, or vehicles. If a defendant has been charged with a violent crime, and can prove that either of those factors apply to their case, then they are immune from prosecution for that offense.
So what's happening now is people are trying to provoke other people into doing something that could potentially then be seen as, oh, now I'm nervous because I made you mad and you're being aggressive, so I'm going to shoot you. People are getting shot just going up to people's houses, turning around in their driveway.
Right.
It's really wild. And the reason that connects to the LGBT thing is, let's say someone knows someone's gay and is like, I'm just looking for a reason. Well, now they have a really easy way to kind of provoke a situation where
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm saying, where they can do whatever they want to you. So I'm glad that in your areas, I think my area is not the absolute worst of it in this country right now by any means, but it's up there for sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is the worst of it. But I wanted to take this snapshot now because I want to see how this sounds next year, how it compares to where we are, and then in 5 years and whatever. Because I almost feel like it might just be in my mind, but I feel like our community tends to forget the struggles we go through very, very quickly. Probably because we're not in mainstream history. And I don't think that's necessarily even our fault. We just aren't taught about it in school, right?
Yeah.
And we've made a lot of progress really quickly lately, but that can be taken away so freaking fast. And it can get dark really fast. And I don't want to scare people, but I think information is important. So I'm just going to make this announcement here. I think I've told Chris, you may have heard this already, but the Human Rights Campaign? Okay, so for the first time in the United States, the Human Rights Campaign declares a state of emergency for LGBTQ plus people. This is due to what we've just kind of been discussing in the last segment. And just a little quote from this article: LGBTQ plus Americans are living in a state of emergency. The multiplying threats facing millions in our community are not just perceived, they are real, tangible, and dangerous. And then it says the group's president, Kelly Robinson, said, in many cases, they are resulting in violence against LGBTQ plus people, forcing families to uproot their lives and flee their homes in search of safer states, and triggering a tidal wave of increased homophobia and transphobia that puts the safety of each and every one of us at risk. Alongside the emergency declaration, the group will release a digital guidebook, including health and safety resources, a summary of state-by-state laws, know your rights information, and resources designed to support LGBTQ plus travelers and those living in hostile states. And this announcement was made just a few days into Pride Month of 2023 by the HRC Human Rights Campaign. I hope this is not why this is happening, but some people are speculating that this is something to do with the 2024 election, trying to get votes for a certain political party.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. But I would say let's do this because people respect numbers, I guess. The first number that pops into your mind, 0 to 10. 0 is completely unsafe. 10 is nothing bad will happen to you where you are. How safe do you feel in today's climate where you are, Rhett?
Did you say on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
Or did I make that up? How safe? So 10 being the safest?
Yes.
Geez. I'll give it a 7.
Okay. What about you, Chris?
8.5.
That's pretty good, actually. So your two areas, honestly, I know it's not perfect, but for people who are looking to relocate, it sounds like there's a couple of ideas out there. I would not suggest my area. I'd give it a 3. And
that's a generous number.
It's a generous number. It's based on personal experiences. I do deliveries here to supplement my income, and there are so many times when I'll go into a store to pick up something, and the person behind the counter just stares daggers at me and will not talk. And then I have to wait for another employee to interact with me. It's really bizarre. And after a certain amount of things, you start to realize oh, it's because of my hair and I look this, you know what I mean? But yeah, so there's that kind of stuff going on, plus all the laws, and yeah, there's safer places you could be. I don't know. I think that shook out kind of how I thought it would. Do you guys want to add anything about that?
No, not really. I mean, I appreciate you doing all this. I think looking back on all this would be important,
Yeah, and I want to make sure that it doesn't I want us to give our little authentic moment of how we really feel here, where it can't be like adjusted later for history. Do you know what I mean? Like, people like to adjust shit up. This is a candid, this is how we feel in the moment. That article I read to you is printed today. If it disappears off the internet, well, you heard about it here. So yeah, we'll see where we land with this later. It should be interesting. All right. I want to take this chance to thank you for doing this, Rhett. I really appreciate you being our guest for this special.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris, for connecting us, by the way, too. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is your chance. Remind everybody who you are, how to spell your name, where to follow you, all of that good stuff.
Well, I am Rhett. My name is spelled R-H-E-T-T. You can find... Blah, blah, blah. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. I go under by Myster Rhett, MYSTER_RHETT. On Instagram, I'm Rhett Collects, so Rhett and then Collects, COLLECTS. And I collect and find a bunch of old vintage toys, and I play games, and I talk about art and music, and I help bring the community together. All of us do. So that's something I love, talking with Sailor Moon fans and anime fans in general. So that's what I do.
Thank you again. And you mentioned to me, this is something I'm excited about. You're gearing up to do, is it on Twitch? Where are you going to be doing your Sailor Moon Another Story thing?
I started doing that on YouTube. I'm not ready for live streaming. That live performance aspect is like too much for me. So I've been recording on my laptop and making edits of my gameplay on YouTube. So you can find me on there. I just posted my first part this week, and I'll be recording tonight for my second part, hopefully to get up by Monday or Tuesday next week. But I'm really excited.
Is it the same name on YouTube?
Yeah, Myster Rhett, Myster_Rhett.
I'm excited about it too. I told you we're doing a different project related to that. So for people who are interested in our upcoming thing, a great way for you guys to get ready, if you haven't played the game, would be to watch his coverage of it. And then that way you kind of have an idea. What is Sailor Moon Another Story? Like, kind of what it looks like, what the basic storyline is, and all that. So people can look forward to that. Chris, do you want to add anything at the end here?
My next interview will be my 300th. So
that's awesome.
Don't know. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know when that'll be specifically yet, but I just did 2 this past week, and I'm hoping it'll be done relatively soon. But I want it to kind of be a bigger name again, just like every other milestone interview I've done has been. So I'm way more focused on quality over number at this point. So I'm hoping that it'll happen soon-ish, but I mean, if it takes almost a month to get a bigger name in anime again, or anime video games, then that's fine. So just anybody who follows us, like, look out for that on my YouTube under Chris Mayak, M-A-Y-E-K, and my Reddit, Mayak Chris, spelled the same, just for my last name first.
Okay, and what were the 2 interviews this week you did?
Stephanie Sutherland, who is Jean in Genshin Impact, and Freya in Fire Emblem, and then Imari Williams, who is Rengoku's dad in Demon Slayer, and Valter Benny in Anankos in Fire Emblem.
Nice.
Oh,
and
cool.
Those are live, right, on your YouTube now? So people can check those out.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to close the episode there. Rhett, consider yourself a friend of the show. We'd love to have you back sometime.
Yes, me too. I would love to come back.
Yeah, and we're going to go ahead and end there. So you guys, for logistics... Thanks for listening to Moonstar Pride 2023. Links to follow our guest, Rhett, are available in today's episode description. Moonstar is sponsored in part by Sailor Moon Video. Shop with code Moonstar for 15% off. Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We do not claim any ownership over audio clips or sound effects used during the creation of this show. All media used during the creation of this show belongs expressly to the license and copyright holders.
La, la.